Alright, welcome back. Today I have another very exciting game. We're going to continue following Andy Liu through the 12th annual Sankei Tournament in Japan. This is the second game he played in the preliminary round against Takashima Yugo. And Andy Liu is an American pro and not like Michael Redmond or some of the other American or European players who have become pros in Japan through their Go associations, basically by just studying over there and then passing the qualification tournament to become a professional through the Japanese system itself. This is actually through the American Go Association. Currently the winner of the main tournament at the US Go Congress every year is being promoted to be a professional representing America through our own certification system and through agreements with the various Go associations in Japan, Korea, and China. And this system is primarily in a partnership with the Korean National Baduk Association, which is very cool that they're helping us out, and they're basically able to go over and study with the Korean inseis and pros. And I believe that the AGA gives them some sort of stipend for that as well, but I'm not sure exactly what the details are. But it's very cool that we have this system being developed in the United States right now. And Andy Liu has won his first game in the preliminary round of this tournament, and we're going to see if he can pull off another victory here. And this is a very interesting opening. You know, everyone starts on the 3-4 points, which is a little rare these days. You don't always see that. And then, you know, black decides to, you know, approach, white counter approaches, black approaches, and then this is really interesting, white counter approaches down here. And this is basically, like, the most aggressive way white can play. Like, this creates a very complicated whole board situation, and at the moment it's a little like mirror go, because the moves have been replicated, but they're not playing mirror go. They'll go off the rails here in just another couple moves. And you know, white has approached, you know, 2 times instead of responding to black's approach, and it's really cool to see white, you know, just going all out in this game. So, you know, black comes up here, you know, the idea being that if white defends over here, this extension, you know, well, this would be a little far from just these 2 stones, but it would also be a pincer. So that would be one sort of thinking, but you can definitely limit the scope of white stone by extending over here, even if it's not a direct pincer. So, but white doesn't respond to this. White goes back to this corner now, and they play a very simple Joseki. And then this is, you know, a move that's, you know, normally, like, we just think this is the Joseki move, but a lot of times, especially, you know, in the last few years, what I've seen is professionals really try to get a stone over here, and then white will do something like come out here, and then black will make this extension and get like a little nicer shape on the side than just having the one, because the concern is that if we just do this, this is almost Sente. Like, we almost have to come here to defend the invasion point over here at A. So, and sometimes a move at B would also be possible, threatening to link out on both sides, but a lot of times you'll start with A, black will cover, and then you'll just descend to B, threatening to link out, and that basically robs black of a base. So a lot of times black will have to respond, and this just seems a little cramped for black. You know, for playing 5 moves, and we're only really getting, like, you know, 6 points of solid territory for sure right now, because, you know, white can attach and Hane and do all this good stuff. So, you know, black plays a little more actively, coming over here, white comes up, and then before immediately, you know, defending over here, you know, black jumps over this way, white comes out, and now, you know, we have this situation where, you know, this seems a little slow for white, just playing 2 diagonal moves in a row, but white is super strong now, and these 2 black stones are definitely weak, and there's still invasions, you know, at places like A, so there's a method to white's play here. Then white comes back to defend the corner. It's always good. And then black comes back to this corner. And see, we just have all these unresolved situations. Like, white never answered the move at A. And now black is getting the first move in the lower right, too. Because, and the reason that black's not following up by, say, playing at B or pincering somewhere like this, is that the low stone at D makes it really unattractive to try and develop the top side. Whereas you can see white's got this high, thick shape going all the way up to the, sixth line facing the bottom. So the bottom right corner is a little bit more urgent than the upper right corner, which is why black doesn't follow up immediately, but instead comes down here. Because the situation with these two stones, E and F, is also highly unresolved. If black gets a move, to put, another stone in, like even just making this triangle move or just backing off to here, these stones are going to be a lot more useful, because right now they're just super weak. But with another move, they could tie into an overall black strategy better. White comes into the corner here, and then we have this very new kind of style. In the old days, people used to play the triangle point, but that's just a little slow in the modern way of thinking. So now, black will just extend, and a lot of times too, if white, does, hane here, instead of connecting, it's also possible to just make another 2-point extension. And this lets, white take the corner easily, but you get a pretty solid, position on the lower side this way as well. But in the game, white attaches here, and this is not the classical Joseki move. The classical Joseki move is this, but this is depending on a ladder going up here, which I believe is good for white at this point. If black just, protects this one stone on the side, white can come in like this. And if the ladder is working, black has to come back like this, and then white can capture this stone. And, white doesn't get a whole lot, but black gets just a 2-space extension and these few stones pushed down super low that don't even have a full base yet. But this is one of those Josekis where it's just like nobody gets anything good, which, it's just kind of an ugly result for both sides, but equal. But in this case, instead of doing this, I think even though this ladder would be good for white, yeah, it's coming up into the white stone right here. White doesn't want black to be able to play like a ladder breaker here, and then white has to just do something like this, and black can kind of seal in this whole corner on a large scale. That wouldn't be good for white. So white avoids the ladder variation by attaching here, which is very active, and I think white gets a reasonable result from this. White hits the weak point in black's shape down here, and black is able to come on top because this stone is not immediately capturable the same way it was before. So if we do this, black can just come out and is going to be able to get the liberties to come back. Like even if we cut here, black can just come back and capture. And even if white tries to seal in like this, obviously at this point, like these stones are going to die. So this is a terrible result for white. So the black is able to come on top here. Let's see, I get back here. Yeah, come on top here instead of having to connect on the first and second line. So that's a little bit better. But white cuts over here, and this is going to give white the resources, essentially, to handle the situation. So, black builds up a little bit of thickness on the outside, and then white puts this aji to use, basically saying, hey, I'm going to come out a little bit. Because now, like, you can't really perfectly, there's still a lot of aji in the cutting points. So white comes back to live, and the thinking being that, even if black does seal white in as best as black is able, that this and this and this are gonna still be, this is gonna give white like plenty of scope to make good shape on the outside, and then white could jump out in any number of ways. Or I think connecting directly would be a little heavy, but you can see getting these 3 stones on the outside really does a lot to nullify any potential thickness that black might be wanting to get out of this. So once these weaknesses are in the outside shape, white just comes back and lives. And oddly here, I think, even with the weaknesses, I still think it's better for black to come from the outside and seal white in as much as possible. But it's really hard to say because you don't get rid of that aji, unfortunately. So now black comes over here to attack this stone, because this is kind of the last big area up here. And this stone is also weak. It's got, white needed a move to respond to the black diagonal move and never made it. So it's a good follow-up. If your opponent ignores one one move in a corner, you know, adding another one is going to be pretty good. So here, white just slides and then changes over to get this group totally out. And this is a really good result. And black, by compensation, takes the corner and, you know, threatens to come in and take this territory. Like the monkey jump would be big, and I think it would reduce white to only one eye, most likely. It would be, well, actually no, because if black slides, white can come here and just capture. But, you know, it's, you know, white's not going to get any territory in here if black makes that slide, though. But white gets this and kind of has the same squeezing maneuver. And see, now this group is just out with good shape. And this is a really big, you know, this is good for white, because black is not making much territory down here. Black has just these stones, but they're not even particularly strong now that white's all the way out like this. You know, there's plenty of scope, especially being open at the bottom, for white to invade in this area around Q12. And this shape is obviously ugly, so I just feel like, you know, black didn't get a good result out of this. Not as good as a standard Joseki, especially because it was black's corner, and white didn't get two moves in a row or anything. You know, white played a move, and then later black came back to pincer it. And if we compare this to the standard Joseki results from this shape, I think it's clear that white getting out and destroying all this potential territory is a better result than the Joseki. And as I mentioned, you know, there's this invasion, which white uses immediately to pressure these three stones. And with the Aji on top, it's going to be really hard for black to kill this stone and not let these live as well, just as a consequence, you know, because if black comes out to attack this stone, these stones get tons of forcing moves on the top. So black throws in a forcing move over here, kind of to give these stones, just these three stones are going to be basically sacrifice stones, but they're there to slow white down. Because if they weren't on the board, white could just extend all the way out to here. But as it stands, if white extends all the way out to here, black has a good response just isolating the one stone and reinforcing. So now it's like 4 on 1, you know, which is not good. So, you know, and white had to respond. So then black comes over to attack the invasion stone. And black has a cool strategy here. Black's going to say, you know what, these three stones are kind of weak. I've basically destroyed what territory you might have gotten over here. So I'm actually going to sacrifice these three black stones, three triangle black stones right here, in order to capture these white stones on top. And I'll make a big capture, taking, like, you know, this huge corner. You'll make some territory as well, but black is saying I'll get more out of it. And the players are going to have a conversation about that. So we get this, and then we get all this cutting. It's very exciting. White jumps out. It's basically, you know, swallowing up these stones on, you know, a medium scale. You know, you'd like these stones to be another couple lines out. Black seems to be swallowing up the white stones on top on a very large scale, but unfortunately for black, these white stones still have a lot of Aji. You know, there's even little things like just playing this Hane, and yeah, you know, black will cut off this stone, but white could just live in the corner on a really small scale, which wouldn't really be making territory for white, but it would, you know, destroy some of the territory for black. And so there's still scope for white to use these stones to accomplish something. White just comes out here, you know, isolating that black stone. Black comes out as well, so this is looking like a real fight right now between, you know, these two and these two. But white just defends, black jumps out this way. Again, you know, you can see black's strategy is just to, you know, swallow up the top right on a large scale. But then white has this really clever, you know, move right here, which is either going to give white, like if black just comes down to defend like this, well, I can jump here and, you know, between this territory that white just gained with the last two moves, which is a good another 10 points of solid territory, and the territory white made over here, black didn't really gain that much on top. So instead, black decides that, you know, just defending isn't enough. We have to counterattack here. And so black comes up with this attachment, which ends up being really harsh and leads to a pretty big exchange. This is a really cool sequence. I would not have thought of this move myself, but it's pretty clear, like, if white just does something like this, you know, black now has isolated the white stone and is taking the entire top side. So white has to come up with an active way to play here, and does it by ignoring the attachment against this stone and jumping over here, basically saying, hey, I can just connect all these stones and live real easy since you didn't defend. Black also ignores, and this is what I meant when I said we get a trade here is that basically black is going to do a lot of damage to this corner, whereas white's going to try and take the top side. And so white crosscuts create complications, black comes in, white Ataris, black cuts, white captures, and then black comes and takes the left corner away from white. But in exchange, white gets the whole upper side as territory. So you know how black sacrificed these 3 stones to try and take this large upper right corner? Like, that territory is basically gone now. Like, all of these black stones in here have maybe 5 points of territory on the edge of the board at the moment. So, you know, white has basically, you know, kept black from gaining anything in the upper right, and the only thing that black has really gotten here is this corner. And, you know, this corner, you know, was going to be like, you know, like 10 points in here for white, and now it's like 8 points for black, so that's a big swing. That's probably like an 18-point swing, but there's also, due to some of the quirkiness of the endgame Sankei relationships, there's actually a decent chance that white will get to reduce this. And the way that that will happen is, black first extends here, but at some point it will be big for white to connect here, which is Gote. Or, I mean, black could choose to respond by, like, descending and keeping the corner territory secure. But that would make white's connection Sankei, and there's probably likely to be a move that black wants to take instead, which means that once black goes and does something, you know, somewhere else, white can attach here, and in this sequence, black has to come back and capture these 2 stones now. So white gets this Sankei follow-up, and we can see that if this happens, which as I said is likely just because that first white move is likely to be, like, black's not likely to answer it, which then gives white this follow-up at some point. So white is, you know, thinking, well, you know, if you only get, like, these 4 points in here, if that's the only real difference, then, you know, I guess there's capturing 2 stones, so it would actually be 6 points in here. If you only get the 6 points instead of like 10 or 12 in the corner, like, that's not quite as big as it looks. So, and white, you know, took all of this territory. Like, the territory on top is now bigger than the territory in the corner was, so it seems like white is handling this game pretty well so far. Extends, and then black comes back and threatens to capture these 2 stones, and I think white makes a really good decision here to just sacrifice them, because if white comes out with these stones, black is going to get a lot of stones facing this last active area of the board, which is just kind of like in this area, you know, is kind of the last big open area. And if black gets, you know, a string of stones, you know, facing it, you know, and even if white, you know, just jumps out and connects now, you know, black can actually look to, you know, play something, you know, over, you know, or maybe just this Atari, double Hane here, you know, to build, you know, something modest. Like, it wouldn't be huge, you know, but you could threaten, by threatening to enclose this, you could get this huge area on the bottom. It's like what we can see now is if we do something like this, and white jumps in here, like, this territory on the bottom has gotten massive as a result of threatening to take this territory up here. Even if white comes and takes these 2 stones now, it's not really that big of a deal. But instead of doing something like that and just struggling out with these 2 stones, white says, you know, I'm going to reinforce over here, and then black comes back and takes these 2 stones, and the reason this is okay for white is that black is taking these 2 stones on a very small scale. Like, we can see that there are, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stones being played to capture just 2 of white's stones. So white's okay with this. Like, if you know, if someone's going to take your stones off the board in a literal manner like this and, like, actually come back and reduce their liberties, that's often not that bad for you. Especially because, you know, there's not really a lot of scope if we go back. There's not a lot of scope to attack the triangled stones here. Like, if these were more attackable, it might be worth saving the cutting stones, but as it is, like, we've got, you know, this group, and this group, you know, all have access to the center of the board. The group at A, or not the group at A, but 1, 2, 3 white groups all have access to the center of the board, and they're all alive, like none of them can be attacked. So it's going to be really hard for black to make any territory in the center of the board, because if black does something, you know, like let's just, if it's black's move, if black tries to like say, oh, I'm going to seal you in over here, white can just jump from this group, and black's not getting anything. And vice versa, you know, if black is like, oh, I'm going to, you know, try and, you know, do something over here, you know, white can just, you know, come through this, you know, these weak stones over here and prevent black from getting anything. So there's not really any concern of white's about, you know, black making territory in the center. So if black wants to take these 2 stones off the board like this, it's not really a big deal for white. White gets this, you know, Sankei Hane in, comes back to, you know, really decimate the shape of these stones. Throws in a forcing move, protects this side, because now that this group is so strong down here, the invasion over at A is getting to be really severe, because white can either live inside, which would destroy black's only decent-sized territory, or could connect back to this, or could fight out and try to connect over to B as well. Like, there's just too many ways that white could go with an invasion in here, so black has to defend now. And that gives white Sankei to just keep marching along the bottom, destroying, like, these 3 stones are now completely worthless. They're just, you know, totally done for. You know, white does this in Sankei and gets to come back here, which is good because this is really swallowing up the A stone on a large scale. You know, it wouldn't be good for white to have to come back and capture it directly. So this is kind of, you know, this is the same as when black captured the triangled stones. You know, had to come back and play the A move directly to capture them, which is similar to if white had to play here to capture this black stone. This would be good for black. You know, this stone is just taking 1 stone on a small scale. But white's playing a little bit more active, jumping out to here, and with the shortage of liberties of these 2 stones, it's not like black can really like push this way. Like, this is looking really bad, and this stone is on a vital point to really limit the scope of these stones. So this is a good move. You know, it's kind of poking in at the weaknesses in black's shape and capturing the A stone on a large scale. Black slides to here, expand the territory, reduce white's. You know, obviously this is a good, white would like to have made that slide as well. And here white, you know, black is expecting white to have to come back and defend the corner, just because losing the whole corner would be too big. But first white throws in this clamp, and this is just crazy, because when I was first going over this game, I did not see this Aji in the position at all. But, you know, I did mention that there was some weaknesses back here, and here white puts them to devastating effect, playing this Hane, threatening to live, and black decides that the best response is actually to separate and allow white to take the corner. So what we see here is, you know, white really elegantly takes this corner, and even does it in Sankei, because black has to come back and play this to make sure that, you know, white doesn't push in here and destroy, like, all of the shape. So then white comes back and gets to turn here, which is crazy, and black actually, you know, if black does something in the corner now, white will jump in here, and this gets really rough for black. Like, white can do some, or it might be better to just attach here directly, but there's definitely some moves for white in the position. So black actually comes back and defends the left side, which, as I said, this left side is black's only big territory. Black's got a little bit on the lower right, depending here. You know, this could be modestly sized, but I doubt black's going to get more than 15 points out of this situation down here. And then black has, like, maybe 5. Well, with the 2 captured stones, that's 4 in and of itself. So say maybe, like, 7 in this whole mess of stones over here. White has basically taken all the territory. And now white gets to come back and do this. So it's a really cool sequence where white took the corner in Sankei, made this turn in Sankei, and then came back to defend. So, you know, white's really pushing hard for every advantage. And here black, this is black's compensation, and black might have thought that white would have responded to this as well. Like, once black plays the Hane at in-16, black might have been thinking that white would definitely have to defend this in some way. I don't know what would be best here. Maybe this would be best. I don't know. But white doesn't, which does let black come back and take a little bit of territory on the top. But white pushes out with this Hane to, limit black on the bottom. And just as, you can see white fighting so hard to keep the advantage at all times. And even with this stone in Atari, these stones still have that shortage of liberty situation going on. It's a little awkward. And now black finally comes and makes this monkey jump. And the problem is, like, normally the monkey jump is Sankei, because normally there's a big follow-up to it. But in this case, there's not. There's nothing black can do here that white is that concerned about. Now that the territory is already gone, and white has this, outside stuff here, and has captured these stones over here, like, this group isn't weak anymore. This group is alive. So this is just a territorial move. If this were threatening the eye shape, which, I mean, it does threaten the eye shape on this little edge area, but now that we've captured these stones, we don't care. So this move is not Sankei anymore, and I don't know, like, it's probably the biggest move regardless on the board, but, the fact that this is Gote is really painful for black. And what's more is that its follow-up isn't even Sankei either. White can go do anything else on the board, and even when black follows this up, white can just do this. Black has to come here and do this, and white can take Sankei again to follow up somewhere. So, there's just, it seems like a really slow move, and it does destroy a lot of territory. Like, if we go back before the monkey jump, if black just does something random and white comes down here, we can see that, like, these 8-10 points of territory is pretty big at this point in the game. So, the problem is that, unfortunately for black, the monkey jump is not Sankei in this game. And that gives white the chance, and I pointed this out earlier, white comes back and plays this. And due to, the fact that if black does defend now, that makes this white connection Sankei, and white gets another big point. So black actually is going to ignore it to play this big move right here, which, if we go back, if black does do this and white gets to do this, we kind of lose out a bit, territorially from this initial, approach that we made. So black is going to ignore this white move and play back here, and now white gets to put that sequence into effect. And so the thing is that when we look at the comparison of, or actually let's go a little bit further so we can see the follow-up in the lower right compared to the follow-up in the upper left. White connects here, which is going to cause some shenanigans. And white is a little worried about, well, basically, we see at this point that, white could capture these stones, these 3 stones right here. The problem with this is that black will play here, and now black has started a ko for the corner. So it's really not tenable for white to play to capture the black stones in this position. So instead, white pokes in here, because now we've added these liberties, so this cut here is dangerous, because if we can capture these 3 stones, that would be a huge reversal. Black says no, and then white white makes this empty triangle because it threatens, if black just does something, it threatens this snapback, and it basically forces black to make an empty triangle as well. And then these are just guidelines, it's like if you can force your opponent and it makes an empty triangle, well, so be it. You got stronger, you saved a couple points of territory right in here in Sankei, so it's totally fine in this case. And then white just keeps building on the outside, not trying to capture these 2 stones, and because that would put the corner in danger. And then white comes back down here to swallow up the 1 stone, expand the territory a little bit. And you can see, like, at this point, too, and the reason that we're basically focused on endgame right now, even though there is a fair bit of open space in the center, is that, like, white has, 3 different groups all facing the center. And likewise, black also has 3 different groups all facing the center. So there's no way for a player to really make any territory, because the moment that, if black tries, to do something like this, white just jumps from the other direction, and there's nothing black can do. You know, like if black could get, you know, a couple moves in a row somewhere, like white just turns here, and then black gets this, we could see black might extend out and get like another 4 points of territory, which I mean is not even that big. But you can just see how hard it's going to be with so many of each player's groups all active and alive, and there's no weak groups to chase. So, you know, everything's just active and alive, so there's no real potential in the center. So you're going to see, like, we're already well into endgame at this point in this game. And here black is, you know, doing this to sort of see if he can force white to back off a little bit because of the Aji at the F5 stone. And white's going to say, well, what about the lower side here? And white has kind of this neat idea to come in like this, because this creates the shortage of liberties for the two black stones, which means white's going to be able to seal this group in. Black just draws back, and you can see, you know, it's just kind of like, well, now we know nobody's making territory. So let's see, how much did black get down here? There's 2 points for the captured stone there, plus 4, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, roughly 14. I guess this is a little over 15. I said I'd be surprised if black got more than 15, but it's actually a little closer to 20. It's like 18-ish, give or take, exactly what happens over here. So, yeah, it's pretty good. Here, white puts this to use, but white is not going to capture these black stones. White is going to sacrifice these 4 white stones here to play this in Sankei, which resolves the co-potential. And black has to come back and connect, so white sacrifices a few stones, but removes the co-potential in Sankei, which is probably good enough. Comes back here to seal off this territory, which is good. And see here, black comes here now, but unfortunately this is not Sankei either, as white plays the sequence I mentioned earlier, and then gets Sankei to come back and counter-punch in the center here. And then black gets this one Sankei move, forcing white to capture the one stone, finally. But, you know, you notice that black played first this descent, which was Gote, then this monkey jump, which was Gote, and then this extension, which was also Gote, to get this result. And so you can see that, yeah, white lost, you know, 10, 12 points of territory, but black played 3 Gote moves to get that result, and it just seems a little slow. A little slow for black. But the game is so close. You know, like, I have been really fond of white's play in this, but the truth of the matter is that on the board, black has a small lead, and the question is if that lead is going to be big enough to outshine the Komi. Because at this point, black is like roughly like 5, 6, maybe 7 points ahead, so it's like basically tied with Komi at this point. But at the same time, there's very little space for either player to do anything major. Like, you can see, like, even with, like, you know, black is getting, like, maybe 2, maybe if black gets another move, like 3, 4 points in here, but white also got 3, 4 points in here. It's really hard for one player to seize an advantage at this. And you can see, like, we're even playing Gote, like, 2-point Gote moves is how far into the endgame we are. Like, this game is almost over. Black takes Sankei privilege to Hane over there. Captures a stone. Black threatens to come in. White protects. Black cuts. And then white has to come back and obviously save this connection. And then black, you know, is trying to get a few points over here, you know, so this is maybe another 4 points that black can eke out. You know, but white's going to come here, and then when black defends, white captures this stone, which also gives white, like, a extra 4 points, so it's super, super, super close. Really, really probably nerve-wracking for both players. Like see this sequence right here, like, white plays this move even though, like, oh, no, actually, this Atari, and then cutting off these 2 stones would be big. So this is actually a pretty big move. But, you know, here it's just these little pokes and pushes, nothing too insane going on, just some Sankei move, forcing moves. And we get down to the end here, and then this is kind of key. to take this ko instead of, say, filling over here at the moment, or even pushing here is not going to gain you anything, because if black is foolish enough to fight this ko, and white, like these 4 black stones are in Atari, so if white captures it 1, this would be plenty of points. Gaining 8 points at this point in the game would guarantee white a victory. So black has to give way and fill in a point of his own territory. So white gains, this is basically a 1.5 point endgame maneuver, because black has to it costs black 1 point to fill in his own territory, and there's a 50-50 chance that you'll win this ko. And whoever wins the ko is essentially going to get 1 point. You can think of it that way. So this is a 1.5 point endgame move. Counting gets really tricky with ko, especially, like, even small kos in the endgame can be really tricky to calculate. It's a little weird. So here people are connecting, and part of this is just, to limit the number of ko threats on the board. Why was this necessary? I'm really surprised. Here's the deal. Let's say white just ignores to fill this ko. Here, let me change back to the move tool. If white ignores to fill this ko, we have this really scary situation where now we'll have to come back, and black gets this point for this ko basically automatically. And the game is so close that these tiny little things really matter. So black finally comes back to fill the 1 ko, white fills the 1 ko, and then black's going to capture that stone, and then white is actually, at this point, a 1.5 ahead and doesn't need to fight this ko. So white just fills here, and then black fills here, and white wins by 0.5 point. Super, super close game, but Andy Liu does it again. That's 2 games in a row in the preliminary of the 12th Sankei tournament in Japan, which is very exciting. And this game was just, it was really cool to see white just go all out from the very beginning. White ignores both approach moves against his own corners to approach black's corners, and then just is willing to get into this very complicated game. Where there's like fighting and invasions and craziness all over the place. Again, I think black might have just slipped up just a little bit in the lower right. It just seems like white got a decent result here. Not getting sealed in, taking this territory, and also having the positional judgment to, not freak out about this descent. I think this was really, like, white did very well to take the initiative instead of defending this territory down here, because, yeah, it's nice to have a base, but if you're going to get out with, like, this really good flowing shape that's actually pretty thick and weaken both black sides a lot, especially because you're doing it in Sankei, as long as you ignore this descent, I think that's a good trade for white, especially at this point in the game. There's a lot bigger points than just protecting 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, maybe 11, let's say 11 points of territory is not really that big. 11 points in Gote is definitely endgame. So, keep that in mind. If the size of your move is that. Now, of course, if you need a base, if there's a bunch of black stones out here, and you need a base for your stones, like in this situation, even though white's out, white is not going to escape. So white really needs at this point to save the base and make sure that there's 2 eyes there. But that's not the game, obviously. And then, just getting squeezed like this, I just don't think, I don't think black got the best deal here. But definitely something to look into. I did a quick glance, and this first white attachment here is not actually in, well, I just checked the Idago Joseki dictionary to see if there was anything, and this is not in that database, surprisingly, so I might have to do some more research. This could be a new pattern. That's one advantage of, becoming a professional and studying in Asia, is that you're all hip to the new patterns that the pros are playing. Whereas, here in the US, it takes a few years for some of that knowledge to get disseminated sometimes. And a lot of the Joseki dictionaries that are available in English are very out of date, unfortunately. But yeah, just a great game. White went all out, and apparently needed to because White only won by half a point. So just very exciting. It's really cool seeing a U.S. certified pro do well in the preliminaries of an Asian tournament, and super excited to see what happens in the future here with Andy Liu. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that. See you next time.